One-step equations with negative numbers. Let's take a look at some one-step equations with negative numbers. Now these first three examples, they're all addition, so we're going to use the inverse operation of subtraction on all three of these to isolate the variable. So the opposite of addition is subtraction. Those cancel out. Now I find it a little bit easier to do the work horizontally as opposed to having the number down here. I think it's just a little bit easier visually to do the calculations. So if you remember, it's easier to add integers than it is to subtract, so I'm going to turn this into addition by adding the opposite. And positive 5 plus negative 17 is negative 12. So we can check this really easily by substituting our answer of negative 12 for m. Is negative 12 plus positive 17 5? It is, so it checks. Let's do another one. So we're going to subtract 16 from both sides to isolate the variable. And I'm going to turn this into addition by adding the opposite. And negative 26 plus negative 16 is negative 42. Let's go ahead and check our answer. We'll substitute in negative 42 for m. Is negative 42 plus positive 16 negative 26? It is, so it checks. The next one, I'm going to subtract 18 from both sides. I'm going to turn it into an addition, add the opposite. So a negative 13 and a negative 18 is negative 31. And let's check to see if that's right. And negative 31 plus a positive 18 is negative 13, so it checks. Now these three questions are all subtraction, and these are a little trickier. So to isolate the variable, we're going to add on all these. So the opposite of subtracting 14 is to add 14 to both sides. And a negative 36 plus positive 14 is negative 22. Now the check is actually harder than solving for m on these. I'm going to take our answer negative 22. Is negative 22 minus 14 a negative 36? Well, if you add the opposite, negative 22 and negative 14 is negative 36. Let's do another one. So we're going to add 25 to both sides. Those cancel out. So negative 14 and positive 25 would be 11, positive 11. Let's double check that. We're going to substitute this in. Is 11 minus 25 negative 14? Well, if you add the opposite, 11 plus a negative 25 is negative 14, so it checks. In our last example, we'll add 16 to both sides. So m would be a negative 16. And just to double check that, I'm going to substitute negative 16 for m. I'm going to turn this into addition. I'm going to add the opposite. And negative 16 and negative 16 is negative 32. Now these are pretty easy. These are all multiplication questions. So we're going to use division on all three examples to isolate the variable. This is negative 9 times m, so we're going to divide by negative 9 on both sides. These cancel out, and 108 divided by negative 9 is negative 12. Let's double check that. Is negative 9 times negative 12 a positive 108? And it is. Remember, spawn, same signs positive, opposite signs negative. So the signs here are the same. They're both negative, and we ended up with a positive 108. Next, this is 12 times n, so we're going to divide each side by 12. So m would be a negative 12. Just to double check that, is 12 times negative 12 negative 144? It is, so it checks. In our last example, we're going to divide each side by negative 3. And a negative divided by a negative is a positive. And let's just double check it. So is negative 3 times a positive 102 negative 306? Yes, it is, so it checks. Okay, we have three division questions, so we're going to use multiplication on all three to isolate the variable. In our first example, we have m divided by 3, so we're going to multiply by 3. And a negative 17 divided or multiplied by positive 3 would be negative 51. Remember, we're using spawn. Spawn works on multiplying and dividing. Same signs, positive answer, opposite signs, negative. So let's just double check that. I'm going to replace m with negative 51. Is negative 51 divided by 3 negative 17? It is, so it checks. Next we have m divided by negative 5. Well, I'm going to multiply by negative 5 then. I'm going to multiply the other side by negative 5. M would be negative 60. Double check. I'm going to substitute this in, replacing m with negative 60. And is negative 60 divided by a negative 5 positive 12? Well, it is. Signs are the same, so we end up with a positive result. In our last example, we have m divided by negative 6, so we're going to multiply by negative 6. To cancel that out, I'm going to multiply the other side by negative 6. And again, we have a negative times a negative, so that's positive 84. Let's double check our answer. Let's take 84 divided by negative 6. Is that negative 14? It is, because the signs are opposite, so it will be a negative result. So that's how you solve one-step equations with negative numbers.